It's nice to be here. Are you excited? Yeah. I had the benefit of also being at the Barrie Fearless Conference, and it's a powerful day. And so you're in for a treat as you listen to multiple stories from the stage as well as from the people around you. So enjoy, take advantage, and connect. All right. So I'm Lori Stephenson, and it's your life, and it's your choice. Most people live their lives by accident. We live it as it happens. And fulfillment comes when we live our lives on purpose. I love this quote. It's by Simon Sinek. And specifically, what I love about it are the last two words, on purpose. Because to do something on purpose means that we do it with intention, that we make a deliberate choice and then take action to align ourselves with that. And when you think about our lives, think about the multitude of choices you are making on a daily, annual basis. Countless. And how we make those choices, consciously or unconsciously, determines what we experience. How many of us can say that we are consciously choosing on a regular basis? So many years ago, I asked a mentor of mine, am I living up to my potential? And she said, no. Yeah, I know. And I laugh now. At the time, I was not laughing. And I don't even know what I was thinking with the question. It's a pretty big question. And I don't think I was expecting the free pass. But I thought I might get more than a no. And yet the no stayed with me and it echoed a bit. And it caused me to think and to reflect. And I started to reflect on where I'd been, where I was at that moment, and what I imagined and what I wanted next, and even further down the road. And that prompted me to start to evaluate and make some choices. So today, how I want to start is by sharing with you 3 specific choices that I have made in my life. I've made more. Yeah, but these 3 are conscious. They were deliberate. They were on purpose, based on what I wanted for me, what I wanted to experience and what I wanted to contribute. So the 3 choices, we'll go way back to my 20s. In my 20s, the choice focused on health. When I was 24 years old, I was diagnosed with lupus, which is an autoimmune disease. And in those days, which was pre-internet, the only way to get any information about that disease, that condition, was through your doctor or journal articles. There was no WebMD. There's no mayoclinic.com. So I'm digging through journal articles that are not painting a very rosy picture. And it certainly wasn't what I expected at that point in my life. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this? And I decided I would take 3 weeks off from work. I was going to go home. Nothing like going home to mom and dad for just a little incubation period. So I went back home. And some friends worried that I was going to go to a deep, dark place. I said, no, I need to regroup. This is changing some things. I need to regroup. So I did. And the doctors had simply said, there's no cure. Treatment's going to vary based on what your symptoms are. The best thing we can say to you is reduce your stress. I was 24 years old. What stress did I have? It was still. I took it to heart, and I started to look at myself, and I started to evaluate, and I started to pay attention to my thoughts, and I started to pay attention to my behaviors and my emotions and my actions, and I sort of came up with some things I wasn't really proud of. I was a little controlling, a little judgmental. I thought, okay, maybe this is where I can focus. So I started to do a lot of work on myself, paying attention, that deep self-awareness, because that's where the learning starts and that's where change begins. And what I'm really pleased to say is 26 years later, the disease never progressed. And a few years ago, my doctor said to me, it's almost, as I look at your blood work, it's almost like it never existed. In my 30s, the choice focused on my career. By this point, I had been working about 15 years. I had started in a communications role for a bank, and then I'd moved to a consulting company, and I loved it. I loved it. I was there. I'd been in that consulting company almost 10 years, and I loved the people, and I loved the organization. But the work, it was starting to get repetitive. It was starting to be a little predictable, and I like a little variety. I like a little change. And I knew it. I was in a bit of a rut. But man, it was a comfortable rut, right? Like I knew it was predictable. I worked 3 days a week from home. Life was sweet, except that it wasn't engaging. It wasn't fun. And what I realized was, because this comes in our comfort zone as I was getting a little complacent. I thought it's too early in my career to have stopped growing, to have stopped challenging myself and risking just a little bit. So I made the commitment to myself that at the next opportunity, I would leap. It didn't take long to show up. I was on a global conference call. I was part of the HR team, and an announcement was made that they'd be going through a reorganization. I went, all right. I hung up from that conference call. I picked up the phone. I called my boss. I said, put me on the list. It's time to go. Now, that was as much thought as I'd given it. And so I was like, all right, here we go. And in that next year, I developed and came to a clearer vision of how I would show up in my career next. And so 14 years ago, started a coaching and facilitation business, and every year has been better, and every year has been different, and it's so much fun. In my 40s, my choice focused on relationship. This was probably the hardest choice I've had to make, because I chose to end a 22-year relationship. And I chose to end it not because it was bad, but because it wasn't enough for either of us. I share with you those stories because each of them to me represents very clear, conscious choice about what I wanted for me, what I wanted to experience, how I wanted to contribute, how I wanted to grow. Okay. In my regular day-to-day work, I facilitate. I spend a lot of time teaching and leading and encouraging learning in others. So I have a huge bias for action. I love inspirational days. Like today, you are going to hear stories and you're going to see yourself in other people's experiences and journeys, and it's going to absolutely inspire you and motivate you, and I love that. We get engaged. We feel fearless. And then we go home. And it's not as inspiring. In fact, frankly, it's going to be a little suffocating. And everybody else's needs come first. And we fall to the bottom. Maybe not. So what I like to do is, in addition to sharing some of my stories, is also give you a little bit of a structure. How can you leave today inspired by the many wonderful stories and experiences you're going to hear about to go and take your own? Take it further than what you've already done. So now what I'm going to do is share with you 3 actions, 2 attitudes, and 1 piece of wisdom to make sure that when you leave today ignited and on fire from all of these messages, you are good to go. All right, so first action, start with a question. Maybe not the "are you living up to your potential" question, okay? But I do want you to come up with an exploratory question, one that gets your brain getting bigger and thinking and getting out of your everyday. And let me share with you a story. My oldest daughter, she's now almost 20, and I have 2 daughters. The other's 16. But my oldest daughter, when she was 15, was in a bit of a funk, a bit of a pit. Maybe you remember being 15. It's not the highlight. And she was stuck. She was struggling emotionally and socially and even physically. And she was in this dark, deep place. And as a mom, as a parent, I can be empathetic. I can be supportive, and I'll listen and I'll encourage, and then it's time to do something. It's part of the journey. It's the price of admission to the family, is what I say. It's time to do something. So I gave my daughter a journal, and in that journal I put one question. And the question was this: if time, money, and parental approval weren't requirements, what would you be doing? And I gave it to her and I said, Grace, take this and go and think about it. Go get out of here and go big, okay? I need you to get out of your current experience and imagine and dream. She took it. I didn't know what she'd do with it. But a month later, she came back. And she said, Mom, did you ever want to know the answer to that question? And I'm like, yes. And she said, you know, if I could do anything, right now, what I'd really like to do is part of high school in Europe. I'm like, sweet, nice. I said, what research have you done? She said, you mean it's possible? I said, absolutely, anything's possible. But here's the thing, it's not my dream, it's yours. So I'll support you. I'll sign forms, I'll pay. But you gotta find it. So she went, okay? And she started her research. And she came back with wonderful ideas of boarding school for $100,000. And I said, oh, let me scope this differently for you. Because that's not gonna happen. Keep trying. And then a few weeks later, she came back. She was so excited. She was on top of the world. She had an envelope. She said, Mom, a new French teacher came to the school, and he's brought with him an exchange program, and I want to go. I said, awesome. So in grade 11, she went and did part of grade 11, 3 months in France. And you know, there were so many highlights from this experience, but I think my favorite was when she and I were having the last Skype before she came home. And she said, you know, Mom, sometimes it's been really hard. I could see the emotion, right? The tears. And she said, but you know what? Now I know I can do it. Yes. So, I ask you, if time, money, and approval from others weren't requirements, what would you be doing? All right. That's action 1. Action 2, we have to make it real. Too often, we sit with these wonderful ideas, these dreams, these wishes, but we keep them in our head. And I don't know about you, but it can get busy up here, and it can get confusing, and it can get overwhelming, and it gets to the point of, oh my gosh, there's so many swirling ideas, I don't know what to do. I'll stop thinking about it, or I'll stop doing it. You make it real by simply getting it out of your head and putting structure to it. You put structure to it. So, one simple strategy is you take a piece of paper and you draw a line down the middle, and on the left-hand side, you start with every single action you can think of that you could take to move you closer to that dream, to move you closer to that ideal. All the stuff you can do. In my daughter's case, was starting to research, finding boarding schools, finding exchange programs. What can you do? But then on the other side, because there's going to be stuff. There's going to be stuff that you either don't know about or you don't know how to make it happen, and it feels, a little bit scary. Write it down. Maybe you need financing. Maybe you need to be introduced to somebody at a certain company. Maybe you need to meet somebody, and you don't know yet who. but you know that they need to have certain knowledge or experience. Put it on the right-hand side of the page, but here's the trick. Don't get focused on that right-hand side. Don't get focused on the stuff you can't do alone, because it'll stop you. Because it'll overwhelm you. It's like, oh, I'm missing this information. I can't possibly move forward. Yeah, you got a whole bunch of other stuff you can do. It's your job to get started. Okay, so start with what you can do. And it doesn't have to be the biggest, scariest piece either. It could be like the nice one that feels like you're ready for it. So step 3, action 3. One step. How many of you have ever been in fog? Yeah, okay, really? Because where do you live if you've never been in fog? Okay, yes, thank you. You know, you might have been standing in it or you're driving in it. Okay, now I know. What's it like? So what's that? You don't like it because you can't see anything. It's also close, right? It's close. And so you feel a little constrained. You don't know what's in there. What happens, though, when you move into the fog? Whether it's your car moving forward or you take one step, what happens in that immediate space? You see more. It clears. Yeah, I can't see fully, but I can see more. And if I take another step, I can see even more. And sure enough, if what we focus on is step by step, not big catapults, not Tarzan swings through, but one step at a time, the space clears, and we start to go, oh, this is what I can do here, or here's how I can attempt this or face this. But we get so caught up in that we have to have the entire plan laid out. You know, let me get it all figured out, and then I'll do it. It delays us, and we might miss our chance. So you start with a question. You make it real and actionable. And then all I'm asking you to do is to take one step. Okay, so that's the structure. Everybody likes a structure. It's important to have. It's a nice process step. We can check things off. Feels good. But here's the other part. Other parts that make it that are so important to how you experience and how you move through these choices and these changes that you imagine for yourself. So we're going to start with 2 attitudes, because our attitude is everything. The first is adopting an attitude of betterment. I love this word because it just sounds nice, right? It sounds soft and gentle, and it sounds like there's appreciation and gratitude, because it isn't about perfection. It isn't about being absolutely right. It's about the act or process of improving. And when we look at the changes that we want to create in our lives as really a journey, and that along that journey what we're doing is improving our situation, improving our experience, improving ourselves in some way, we have a little more fun, and we'll take a little bit more risk because it doesn't seem as scary. Doesn't seem as scary. And when we measure the effort that we put towards something rather than the end outcome, we feel a little bit more motivated. It sounds like this. Do I know more than I did a month ago? Am I feeling better than I did a year ago? Okay. Am I happier than I thought I could be? Whatever it is, it's little incremental moments. And when you take those steps and things are a little bit better, don't forget the most important part, which is a little yay me. Let's applaud ourselves. All right. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Yay. So betterment. Second attitude, this one's important too, is an attitude of adjustment. These are about tweaks, small alterations to adjust. How many of you have ever renovated something? Okay, yeah. All right, and you had a plan, didn't you? And you were proud of that plan because you worked hard on it. Okay. Did it go according to plan? And that's what happens, is we set a plan. And then the first oh, we're going to need to talk because this isn't in the right place and we have to modify. We don't just abandon everything and say, well, forget it, we're not going to renovate. We've torn everything apart. We got to keep adjusting. And in that adjustment, we might end up with a better answer. We might, oh, I never thought of that. And it shows up even better and wilder than we ever imagined. But it's this attitude of adjustment, this willingness to be flexible and agile. Too often we get a little rigid, we get a little set that it has to be a certain way. The more fluid we can be in how we see things, how we think about them, and where we think the answers are going to come from, the more open we'll be to the opportunities that present themselves. Betterment and adjustment. In the facilitation world that I spend a lot of time in, we'd call that a growth mindset, where we're all about learning and expanding and just getting better, and whatever your focus may be. All right, so that's 3 actions. We've had 2 attitudes, and now for the piece of wisdom. I want you to watch the loftiness and the scope of your goal. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean hold yourself back. I don't mean don't aim big. You absolutely can go for that big idea, that big dream of yours. What I want you to do, though, is make it so that when you think about it, you feel energized by it. You feel excited by it. Because sometimes when it's really big, we go, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And we scare ourselves into no action. So when you set yourself a goal, it's got to feel like it's a reach out of our comfort zones a little bit, but also something that you're excited about, that you're wanting to do. Somewhere along the line, and I'm not sure where, the idea of purpose became this big, lofty thing where we all have to be affecting humanity, right? If I can't change the world, why should I start? Well, that's a shame, because then you miss out and everybody around you misses out. So I have up here, to illustrate this point, a picture of the David, which was sculpted by Michelangelo in the 1500s. If anybody's seen it in real form, it is magnificent. It is unbelievable. It's still pretty good on the screen. Okay. I put this up for a reason. So in the 1500s, Michelangelo accepted this commission to sculpt the David from an enormous block of marble. But here's maybe what you don't know, is 2 other sculptors had attempted it before. And they had stepped away. They'd abandoned it because they said it can't be done. Can't be done. The marble is flawed. So 2. And so then they approached Michelangelo. He's 26 at this point in his time. And while I wasn't there to observe it, here's what I imagine might have happened, is that he accepted the commission, and he's standing in front of this enormous block of marble. And I think he's bringing with him a level of challenge and excitement and motivation. But you know what I don't think he did? I don't think he stood in front of it and declared to himself and whomever was listening that he now, Michelangelo, would begin to sculpt a masterpiece that would be revered by mankind for centuries. I don't think he did that. I think he's 26. I think he thinks 2 others tried and failed. Let me see what I can do. You know, I'll give it a shot. And he worked on it for 2 years. And this emerged, right? But he didn't set the goal to be so enormous that he shrunk from it, but rather he rose up into it. And that is what I want you to be thinking about as you scope and think about, what is the answer to that question for me? What are the actions I can take? What's the first step I'll take? Because when it feels overwhelming, we freeze. But there's a flip side to that too. The flip side is this. Sometimes we want certainty. We want to know that whatever action we take, whatever choice we make, it's going to be okay. Or something's going to be better, or it's going to work, it's going to be successful, and we want certainty and proof. You show it to me and then I'll do it. But when we wait for that, we hesitate. Either way, whether we're frozen out of fear and the magnitude of the vision, or we're hesitating, waiting for certainty, we miss our opportunity. So, today, you are going to be privy to so many journeys and so many stories, as well as your own, that you know. And it's opportune time for you to reflect and to consider your choices that you've made and where you think you want to be next. And those choices and them being on purpose are about the purpose for you. What aligns with what you want. So, start with a question. If time, money, and approval from others weren't requirements, what would you be doing? Make it real. What are some of the actions you can take? List those. And what's the first one that you're going to take? And here, folks, when will you do it? Is that today? Is it Sunday? Is it Monday? Hold yourself accountable to it. And while you're doing it, adopt that mindset, those attitudes of betterment and adjustment, knowing you don't have to get it perfect right out of the gate. You're going to grow and you're going to learn and you're going to adjust and you're going to keep tweaking and shaping. And make the scope one that gets you excited every day, that doesn't overwhelm you. Because it's your life and it's your choice. And those choices need to align for you with what you want to experience and what you want to create and how you want to contribute for right now, for this year. And the joy is you can keep doing it. So, I leave you with this. It's your life, and it's your choice. Be bold. Thank you.
Lori Stephenson.